Greetings to everybody. Today, I thought this couple of weeks we will study little bit from the talks on the Bhagavad Gita from Vinobha Bhave, which revered Daji recommended. We may not read the whole book, but we will at least try and learn from some chapters and have some understanding of the Bhagavad Gita. Most of you probably already know everything about it. And this week, as I was studying the literature of the masters, there were some thoughts that I understood and I thought I can share. The master says, when all our experiences disappear and only the experiencer is left in the pure consciousness. So consciousness without any content is the truth. So all experiences disappear. And then the journey is just a silence. Sometimes you wonder, at those times, that are you progressing because you're not having any experiences? And that's when I was pondering about that, I came across this statement somewhere where it says all the experiences disappear and only the experiencer is left in that pure state of consciousness. That means consciousness without any content is truth. And that is the state of the masters. Because you cannot really experience godliness, you become that. That is why in one of Daji's statements when he was in Atlanta, talking about, some Abhyasi was saying like how she used to go to a particular teacher and she experienced a lot of power there in the beginning, but later when he really became money minded and was only there for money, she did not notice the power anymore. And then Daji made a very powerful statement that day. He said, when Guru really becomes God, he can never ask because that is not his state of being. The moment a guru starts asking, he cannot be a beggar. Then he falls from that state of being. So that is how lot of gurus, when they at some point they make this mistake of running after money, they lose their godliness because they are not experiencing anymore. They are not in that state anymore. So the state of divinity is beyond experience because experience is only possible in duality. I have to be separate from you for me to experience you. This is why a lot of times, master is inside us and we can't feel. And those are the times I wonder, like, did I do something wrong? Why can't I feel? Because he's a part of you. So when I'm separate from you, I experience you. When I'm one with you, how can I experience you? And that is the reason when we make a mistake, you hear the voice of the master. So we cannot separate the experience and the experiencers, the knowledge and the known, the seer and the seen. So wisdom is that kind of lightning where the known and the knower, they all become one. The seer and the seen become one. All dualities disappears. Only one remains. And that is the beginning of the cosmic region. And no one can really lead us to that wisdom by sharing their knowledge. Only when all veils are removed by the work of the master, that wisdom awakens in us. Wisdom has to naturally awaken in us. Nobody tells us, and suddenly you wake up one morning and you know the truth. So This truth is a challenge. It is the greatest challenge. And this challenge we are seeking. It is not that you possess someday, you have to become it. And the most important challenge to obtain this truth is of facing our innermost self, the core. The challenge to come home, to come to the center, to recognize yourself, to know and to encounter yourself, to face the shadowy self as it is called. And when the shadows are removed, you encounter your own self, and that is very difficult journey. It's called orders. That means it's very difficult. To face oneself is difficult. To face our own ignorance is difficult. That is what we need to accept, the challenge to face ourselves. And in this, when His gaze is on us, all the flaws drop like dry leaves, and you don't even know when we have surrendered. And that is why I always share this technique that I have been practicing. That, and I am meditating, the Master is surrounding me like a complete cloud, like a bubble, and He's observing me. And as His divine grace is on me, all my flaws are just falling away. Because when He looks at me, the Master doesn't look at the flaws, He only looks at your beauty. When He sees your beauty, all the dry things fall off. And it has helped me. The more I'm doing, the more I'm able to see the flaws that exist in me, and so I'm able to pray for them. As His vision falls on us, like the light is turned on, and we're able to see, and then we can pray, Lord, I see this in me, remove it. So the Master is where you are, in the center. Master is the center and the absolute. The disciple is the periphery in the matter world. And the Master and the disciple have to become one. So the periphery has to change its direction from out, going inward to the center, the Master. So Kabir Das ji called this Master and the disciples, he calls them as two birds. And he says the Master sits at the center and is the witness. And the Master is happy. And the disciple is roaming in the periphery. And one day he comes back. Because without this union, there is no bliss. Bliss happens only in union. And that is why we are being called. That's why he calls Master and the disciple as a bird. The bird is, inner bird is singing and calling you. We are being called for the union. And he is constantly calling us from inside. So this is the journey that we are all trying to undertake. We want to move towards. And that is why we are trying to understand. Like the other day when Daji said this Sanskrit statement, Karamule Saraswati, that is, the knowledge is backing up. And the devotion for that ultimate has to become a strong hold on us. And we have to work towards it. The tips of the fingers, he said, karma. We have to work towards it, work towards on ourselves. It is not working out in the field, it is working in this inner field. And that is why Daji keeps on quoting from the Bhagavad Gita. And in this Vinobha Bhave, for ordinary people like me and you, it is just almost like very simple English words he's telling us so we can understand. For those of us who don't know Sanskrit and all that. And this quote I always quoted in many of the classes which Daji has talked about. The first one, he says, Acharya Vinobha Bhave was a towering personality of the Indian freedom struggle. So those of you who don't know who Vinobha Bhave is from our Western world, he was a freedom fighter and was also, in those days, all the freedom fighters were truly spiritual beings who worked for the cause of uplifting humanity. So as a great social reformer and ahimsavadi, non-violent person, he embodied the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And this, Daji says, Bhagavad Gita is of skill in action, struggle for self mastery, and selfless service. So our action has to become skillful, backed by the knowledge, and backed by this devout purpose to achieve it. And it is all for struggle for self mastery. What are we trying to do? We're trying to master ourselves to become better beings day after day. We are striving for betterment. And what will this lead to? This betterment of ourself will lead to selfless service. That's what the masters do. They wake up, they have everything, they don't have to do anything. They can simply go on a cruise for a month and not worry about any one of us. But day in and day out, they keep transmitting. They keep empowering us with knowledge, empowering us with purpose, so we can also transform ourselves. And the first chapter here, at the heart of the Mahabharata. Dear brothers and sisters, from today I shall be talking to you about Bhagavad Gita. The bond between the Gita and me transcends reason. My heart and mind have received more nourishment from the Gita than my body has from my mother's milk. There is a little place for logic in a relationship of loving tenderness, moving beyond the intellect. I therefore soar high in the vast expanse of the Gita on the twin wings of faith and experimentation. All the time I live in the ambience of the Gita. The Gita is my life breath. I am, as it were, afloat on the surface of this ocean of nectar when I am talking about the Gita and when alone. I dive deep into this ocean and rest there. Hence, every Sunday I shall be giving a talk on the teaching of the Gita, who is verily our mother. The Gita has been set in the Mahabharata, standing in the middle of the great epic like a lighthouse. It illuminates the whole of the epic. Placed between 6 sections of the text of the epic on one side and 12 on the other side, its message is being unfolded in the middle of the battlefield, with 7 divisions of the Pandava army on one side and 11 divisions of the Kaurava army on the other side, the two cousins who are on the battlefield. The Mahabharata and Ramayana are our national epics. The characters depicted therein have become an inseparable part of our lives. Since time immemorial, life in India has remained under the spell of the characters like Rama, Sita, Dharmaja, Draupadi, Bhishma, and Hanuman. The characters in other epics of the world have not become one with the lives of the people in this way. The Mahabharata and the Ramayana are thus undoubtedly unique and wonderful works. The Ramayana is an enchanting ethical poem, while the Mahabharata is a comprehensive treatise on the working of society. In the Mahabharata, Vyasa has in 100,000 verses sketched the lives, personalities, and characters of innumerable individuals with consummate skill. The Mahabharata vividly brings out the fact that none but the ultimate God is completely faultless and good, and also that none can be said to be evil personified. For instance, it points out faults even of moral giants like Bhishma and Dharmaja, and virtues in the characters like Karna and Duryodhana, who had strayed from the path of righteousness. The Mahabharata tells us that human life is like a fabric woven with black and white threads, threads of good and evil. With perfect detachment, Vyasa, the great sage, graphically depicts for us the complex reality of the vast web of worldly life. Because of Vyasa's great literary skill, noble as well detached in depicting life, the Mahabharata has become a veritable gold mine. Everybody is free to explore it and take freely as much as he wants. Vyasa wrote such a great epic, but did he have something of his own to tell? Has he told his special message somewhere? Where do we find him in a state of samadhi? Here he gives the example samadhi here means a state in which the mind is intensely concentrated and is in tune with the divine consciousness. That's a good statement for us to remember. This is the sense in which the term has been used in chapter 2.15 as well. In the Mahabharata, one comes across a number of dense thickets of philosophies and preachings. But has Vyasa given anywhere the essence of all those and presented the central message of the whole epic? Yes, he has. He has presented it in the form of the Gita. The Gita is his principal message and the repository of his wisdom. It is because of the Gita that the Lord has extolled him as the sage among the sages, as his own manifestation among the sages. The Gita has been accorded the status of an Upanishad since ancient times. It is in fact the supreme Upanishad. It is as if Lord Krishna has distilled the essence of all the Upanishads and offered in the form of Gita to the whole world. Arjuna's despondency provided only an occasion. Almost every idea and thought necessary for the blossoming of life can be found in the Gita. That is why the wise have rightly called it the encyclopedia of Dharma. The Gita, although small in size, is the principal text of Hinduism. Here, when he talks about encyclopedia of Dharma, Dharma is normally translated as religion, but is much wider concept. Dharma is that which holds and supports everything in the world. Its meaning includes right conduct and duties that become obligatory to a man because of his nature and stature and station. It is well known that Gita was told by Lord Krishna. Arjuna, the devotee who listened to this great teaching, became one with it, so much so that he too came to be called Krishna. Vyasa's empathy while narrating it earned him to the epithet Krishna. Total identity was thus established between Krishna the teacher, Krishna the listener, and Krishna the narrator. That is, Lord Krishna, Arjuna, and Vyasa. There was a total union of that. One who wants to go deep into the Gita should also have concentration of this kind and degree. Arjuna's standpoint and genesis of the Gita. There are many who feel that the Gita should be taken to begin with the second chapter. The actual teaching starts from the 11th verse of the second chapter, so why not take it as the real beginning? A gentleman once argued that the Lord had called a first letter of the alphabet as his vibhuti among the letters of the alphabet, and the 11th verse begins with it. Therefore, it should be taken as the beginning. That apart, it would be right in more than one sense to take this as the real beginning of the Gita. Nonetheless, the preceding introductory portion has a value of its own. Without it, we would not have properly understood Arjuna's standpoint of the view and the genesis of the Gita. Many contended that Arjuna was going weak at the knees, and the Gita was preached to restore his manliness and induce him to fight. In their view, the Gita preaches not only Karma Yoga, that is philosophy of action, but also Yuddha Yoga, that is the philosophy of war. But a little thinking will show the error in this view. 18 divisions of army were ready for the battle. Can we say that the Lord, through exposition of the Gita, made Arjuna worthy to face that army in a battle? It was Arjuna who quailed, not the army. Was then the army braver than Arjuna? It is just inconceivable. It was not out of fear that Arjuna was shying away from the battle. The great warrior had fought hundreds of battles. He had single handedly routed Bhishma, Drona, Karna when they had invaded Virat's kingdom. He was in fact known as one who knew no defeat, a man among men. Valor was in every drop of his blood. Krishna, in fact, did try to needle him by attributing impotence to him, by it proved to be off the mark. He had then to go deep into different aspects of the spiritual knowledge. It is clearly too simplistic to think that the aim of the Gita is to remove unmanliness. It is also said that the Gita is meant to make Arjuna willing to fight by removing his inclination towards non-violence. In my opinion, this view also is not right. To understand this point, we have to examine Arjuna's standpoint. The first chapter and its extension in the second are useful in this context. Arjuna had come to the battlefield with a firm resolve and a sense of duty. Being a Kshatriya, that means belonging to a caste of warriors, he was one of the warriors. Fighting was in his blood. Every attempt to avoid war had failed. The Pandavas had pitched their claims at the minimum, and Krishna himself had tried to mediate, but all in vain, making the war inevitable. In these circumstances, Arjuna had brought together many kings, made Krishna his charioteer, and is now on the battlefield. He asks Krishna with heroic ardor, "Place my chariot between the two armies so that I can have a look at the people who have assembled here to fight with me." Krishna complies. Arjuna looks around, and what does he see? He finds his kith and kin, his near and dear ones, arrayed on both sides. He finds 4 generations of his own people intent on fighting to the finish. It is not that Arjuna had no idea of what he was going to see, but the actual sight, as is always the case, had a devastating impact. Seeing his kinsmen on the battlefield, Arjuna lost his nerve and deep anguish assailed his heart. In the past, he had slain innumerable warriors in many battles, but he had never felt so dejected. Never had his bow Gandiva slipped from his hands. Never had he trembled so. Never had tears welled up in his eyes. Then why was all this happening now? Was he coming to abhor violence like King Ashoka? Certainly not. It was nothing but attachment to his kith and kin. Had those in front of him not been his kinsmen, he would even now have felt no qualms in serving their heads and merely tossing them around. But attachment to the kith and kin clouded his sense of duty, and then he started philosophizing. When a man with a sense of duty is caught in delusion, he cannot face his naked lapse from duty. He tries to justify it by citing lofty principles. The same thing happened with Arjuna. He now started putting before Krishna to convince him the specious argument that war in itself was sinful, that it would destroy the clan, eclipse dharma, and lead to moral anarchy, scarcity, and devastation, and bring many other disasters upon the society. I am reminded here of the story of a judge. He had sentenced to death hundreds of criminals, but one day his own son, accused of murder, was produced before him. The guilt was proved, and the time came for the judge to pronounce the sentence. But then he hesitated and started arguing. The death sentence is inhuman. It does not behove a man to inflict such a punishment. It destroys all hopes of reforming the guilty. One commits murder in a fit of passion, the moment of bloodthirsty madness then passes off. Still, we coolly take him to the gallows and hang him to death. It is disgraceful to humanity. Such were the judge's arguments. But had his son not been there, he would have gone on sentencing people to death. His arguments lacked inner conviction. They were born out of attachment to his son. Arjuna's condition was like that of the judge in the story. His arguments were not unsound. The world has witnessed precisely the same consequences of the First World War. But the point is that Arjuna was not voicing his own authentic conviction. His words were seemingly wise, but not really so. Krishna realized this. He therefore paid no attention to Arjuna's arguments and straightway proceeded to dispel his delusion. Had Arjuna really become a votary of nonviolence, he would not have been satisfied until his arguments had been convincingly answered. But the Gita nowhere deals with them, and yet Arjuna was ultimately satisfied. This means that Arjuna had not really become a votary of nonviolence. The intrinsic propensity to fight was still very much a part of his nature. War was for him his natural and inescapable duty. But he was trying to evade it under the spell of delusion, and it is this delusion that the Gita attacks most pointedly. Purpose of the Gita is dispelling anti-swadharma delusion. Swadharma can be translated, because Daji always quotes this point about Swadharma. Swadharma can be translated as one's natural duty dictated by one's natural state of being, one's true self, and one's station in life. Sannyasa means renunciation of the worldly possessions and attachment. Spiritual seekers take sannyasa and retire from the world to devote fully in the spiritual pursuit. According to the Hindu scriptures, it is the fourth ashram, which should be at the last stage in every man's life. The sannyasa should be at the fourth stage of our life. Arjuna had not only started talking of non-violence, he was also talking of sannyasa. He was saying that sannyasa was preferable to the blood-stained kshatriya dharma, duty of the kshatriya, the warrior. But was this his swadharma? Was this in keeping with his nature? He could easily have donned the garb of a recluse, but how could he have acquired the mentality of a recluse? We can wear orange clothes, but can we really become saints? Had he gone to the forest to live the life of a recluse, he would have started killing the deer there. The Lord tells him plainly, "O Arjuna, you are saying that you would not fight. This is an illusion. Your nature, which has been formed through all these years, will compel you to fight." Arjuna is finding his swadharma devoid of merit. But even if it is so perceived, one has to find fulfillment through its practice only. There can be no pride attached to any particular swadharma. There is no pride attached to it. This is the law of growth. Swadharma is not something to be adopted because it is perceived to be great or noble. It is to be cast off because it appears slowly. Swadharma is neither great nor small. It is equal to our measure. It is that which fits us the best. One's own dharma, even if it is devoid of merit, is the best for oneself. The Gita says. The word dharma here does not mean a religion like Hinduism, Islam, or Christianity. Every individual, in fact, has his own distinct dharma. 200 individuals sitting in front of me here have 200 different dharmas. Even my own dharma today is not what it was 10 years ago, and it will not be the same in 10 years' time. As one's mind grows and develops through reflection and experience. How does the mind grow? Through reflection and experience. The old dharma gets shed and one acquires new dharma. Nothing in this matter should be done obstinately. We will stop here and we will continue. This book is very interesting. This reading will probably help us all understand more. Let us all now meditate.